Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever had the unsettling feeling that no matter what you do, no matter how much you achieve, something within you is still not satisfied? Like a shadow that follows you, whispering, just a little more, then you'll be complete. This is the ego's final trick, the last desperate illusion it plays to keep you chasing, grasping, always just out of reach of the peace you long for. The great paradox is this: the more you try to free yourself, the tighter the trap becomes. The ego thrives on your struggle against it. It seduces you into believing that you must conquer it, transcend it, even destroy it. But in doing so, you unknowingly feed the very thing you seek to escape. Now, if what I'm saying stirs something in you, if a part of you feels both curious and strangely uneasy, that's exactly where we need to begin. Because right there, in that discomfort, is where the trick is being played. Tonight, we will unmask this illusion, not by fighting it, not by resisting it, but by seeing it clearly. Because once you see the trick for what it is, it loses its power over you. Stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you may just realize that the freedom you seek has been here all along. Now, let's begin. The grand illusion of self is the masterpiece of the ego, the trick so convincing that we rarely stop to question it. From the moment we learn to use words like I and me, we begin to weave a story, a sense of being a fixed, separate entity moving through the world. This story is reinforced by memories, experiences, and the labels given to us, our names, our roles, our successes, and our failures. And yet, if you try to pinpoint this self, if you try to grasp it, you find nothing but a collection of ever-changing sensations, thoughts, and emotions. Like a river that never holds still, what we call I is not something solid, but a process, fluid, shifting, impermanent. The ego, however, refuses to accept this. It constructs an illusion of continuity, a feeling that there is a core me that remains the same throughout time. But look closer. The child you once were has vanished. The teenager with different dreams and fears is gone. The person you were yesterday is no longer here. At every moment, you are being reinvented. Yet, the mind clings to an illusion of permanence. Why? Because the moment we see through this illusion, the game changes. The ego no longer has control. It survives only by keeping us invested in its story, making us believe that we must protect, defend, and enhance this self at all costs. The fear of losing identity is its final defense mechanism, the last desperate trick to keep us from realizing that we were never bound in the first place. But if you can see the illusion for what it is, if you can observe the mind spinning its web without getting caught, something shifts, something profound, something free. The chase for control is the ego's favorite game, an endless pursuit that keeps us trapped in a cycle of desire and frustration. It whispers that if we could just get everything in order, our relationships, our careers, our minds, then and only then we would finally be at peace. But life, in its infinite unpredictability, refuses to be tamed. No matter how much we plan, strategize, or struggle, there will always be uncertainty, always something slipping through our grasp. And yet the ego convinces us that control is not just possible, but necessary. Keeps us tightening our grip, trying to force reality into submission, refusing to surrender to the flow of existence. But the paradox is that the tighter we hold on, the more life resists. Like trying to hold water in a clenched fist, our desperate attempts to control lead only to exhaustion, anxiety, and disillusionment. The mind, conditioned to seek safety and certainty, does not want to hear this. It will argue, resist, and convince itself that with just a little more effort it can win the game. But what if the game itself is the problem? What if true freedom is not found in control, but in letting go? This is where the ego's final trick comes into play. It tells us that surrender is weakness, that to release control is to invite chaos. But look at the river. It flows effortlessly, adapting, never fighting against its nature. It does not struggle, yet it carves through mountains. What if life is meant to be lived the same way? What if peace is not something to be achieved, but something revealed when we stop trying to force it? The ego cannot exist without control, and yet control is the very thing that keeps us trapped. The fear of letting go is the ego's strongest weapon, the invisible chain that keeps us bound to its illusions. It convinces us that without it we will be lost, defenseless, and insignificant. It whispers that if we loosen our grip, even for a moment, everything we've built, our identity, our beliefs, our sense of self, will come crumbling down. And so we hold on. We cling to our opinions, our past, our future, and even our suffering, because to let go feels like stepping into the unknown, into emptiness. But what the ego doesn't want us to realize is that this fear is its own creation. The moment we even consider surrender, it panics, throwing up images of chaos and meaninglessness, as if we are standing at the edge of a great void. But what if that void is not the end, but the beginning? What if everything we are afraid to lose was never truly ours to begin with? The trees let go of their leaves without fear, the waves surrender to the shore without resistance, the breath comes and goes without clinging to itself. Yet we alone resist the natural flow of existence. And for what? To maintain an illusion of control, of permanence, of being someone special? The truth is, the more we hold on, the heavier life becomes. The tension, the anxiety, the exhaustion, it all comes from this desperate grasping at something that was never meant to be held. But here's the secret the ego hides. The moment you let go, you don't fall, you fly. The weight lifts, the struggle dissolves, and what remains is not emptiness, but freedom. The very thing we feared losing was never who we truly were. The game of resistance is how the ego ensures its own survival. It thrives on struggle, on the illusion that there is something to fight against, something to overcome. It convinces us that if we push hard enough, if we resist our thoughts, emotions, and circumstances with enough force, we will eventually arrive at some perfected version of ourselves, free from doubt, pain, and imperfection. But here's the trick. Resistance does not free us. It strengthens the very thing we wish to escape. The more we resist a thought, the more power we give it. The more we fight an emotion, the more deeply it embeds itself in our being. Try for a moment to not think of a red apple. Try to suppress sadness the moment it arises. Try to force yourself into calmness when anxiety floods in. The result is always the same. The harder we push, the stronger it becomes. The ego wants us to believe that peace is a prize to be won after a long battle. But peace is never found in resistance. It arises only when the battle itself is abandoned. The river does not fight against the rock, it moves around it. The wind does not resist the mountain, it flows past it. Yet we live as though life is something to conquer rather than something to move with. The ego will tell you that surrender is defeat, that to stop resisting is to give up, but this is its final illusion. The truth is, surrender is not about passivity, it is about seeing through the game entirely. The moment you stop fighting, the struggle vanishes, and what remains is not a weakened version of you, but a presence untouched by conflict, a stillness that was always there. The moment of exposure is when the ego's trick is seen for what it is, an illusion, a mirage, a mask that was never real to begin with. It is not a dramatic event, not some thunderous revelation from the heavens, but something far more subtle, far more unsettling. It happens in a quiet instant when you suddenly notice the voice in your head, the one narrating your life, the one judging, planning, fearing, is not you. It is simply a pattern, a stream of conditioned thoughts, arising and passing like waves on the ocean. For a brief moment you step back, and in that space something shifts. There is no need to suppress it, no need to silence it, just a simple recognition, there it is, the mind doing what it does. And in that instant the spell is broken. You see that the one who suffers, the one who strives, the one who clings and fears, it is not you, but a phantom, a shadow cast by years of conditioning. But the ego does not go down without a fight. The moment you begin to see through it, it scrambles to pull you back in. It may convince you that this insight is nothing, that you imagined it. It may try to turn this realization into another personal achievement. Look, I have seen through the ego. I must be more enlightened than others. And just like that, the trick continues. But something has changed. A crack has formed in the illusion, a gap through which something deeper can be glimpsed. And once you have seen it, even for a moment, the game is never quite the same. The ego cannot fully deceive you anymore. A deeper awareness has begun to awaken. The liberation beyond self is not something that can be achieved, earned, or possessed. It is simply what remains when the illusion of the ego dissolves. And yet, the final trick of the ego is to turn even this into another goal, another thing to chase. It whispers, "You are almost there. Just a little more effort, a little more discipline, a little more knowledge, and then you will be free." And so the chase continues. The mind, conditioned to seek, cannot comprehend that the very act of seeking is what keeps it bound. It is like a wave in the ocean, searching for water, blind to the fact that it has never been separated. The irony is that the self we are trying to liberate does not actually exist. It is nothing more than a bundle of memories, thoughts, and emotions that come and go, a story that has been repeated so often that we mistake it for reality. But when we stop trying to fix, improve, or transcend ourselves, when we simply rest in the awareness that has been here all along, something extraordinary happens. There is no grand explosion, no final victory, no moment where you can proudly declare, "I have awakened." There is only a quiet, effortless shift, as natural as the sun rising in the morning. And in that shift, the weight of becoming, of striving, of proving yourself falls away. The ego may still whisper, may still try to pull you back into the game, but its voice no longer holds the same power. You see through it, you smile at it, and without resistance, without struggle, you move with life, not as a separate self, but as the vast, boundless presence that you always were. And so, the final trick of the ego is revealed not as some external force, not as some enemy to be defeated, but as a mirage that vanishes the moment you stop grasping for it. The chase, the struggle, the endless seeking, it was all a game played in the mind, a dream mistaken for reality. But now you see it, not as an idea, not as a philosophy, but as a direct experience. And what happens when the trick is exposed? Nothing needs to happen. There is no need to fight, to fix, to escape. You do not need to get rid of the ego, for it was never truly there to begin with. Like a shadow, it only seemed real when you stood against it. But now you have stepped beyond it into something vast, open, and free. This is not an ending. It is not even a beginning. It is simply the recognition of what has always been, the silence before thought, the space before identity, the effortless awareness in which all things arise and dissolve. And when you rest here, not as a seeker, not as a self, but as presence itself, you realize there was never anything to fear, never anything to attain. There is nothing left to chase, nothing left to prove, just the simple, boundless unfolding of life exactly as it is. And in that realization, you are free.